Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alec, and I'm going to be here throughout today's session to help answer any general or technical questions that you have. But before we start, I'd like to quickly go over a couple things that you'll have throughout the session. The audio control is located directly beneath the slides in your console. You can adjust the volume on this panel here. But please also be sure to check your computer speaker or headphone volume as needed, as this webinar is streamed through your speakers. Here are all the buttons found at the bottom of your screen. You can familiarize yourself with them here. They're all labeled, but there's a couple important ones for today, and those are the group chat and Q&A. You can chat with your fellow attendees by clicking on the blue group chat icon, and you can submit all questions for today's speaker and any technical issues that may arise for you by using the Q&A box. Click on that purple Q&A icon that's labeled here on this slide, type in your question, and click submit. We have time at the end for Q&A. Your question may be read to today's speaker, and if it is a technical question, I'll have an answer for you, and it should appear on your screen shortly after you submit it. You'll receive a link to the recording of today's webinar and a follow-up email. Please allow at least 2 business days before that info is sent. You can download a PDF right now on the right-hand side of your screen in the resource list. And your HRCI and SHRM certification codes for today's webinar will appear in the upper right-hand corner of the screen in that certification box after the required watch time has elapsed. So we have a great guest with us today, Scott Shafer, Global Head of Learning Measurement and Analytics at Ericsson. Scott is committed to helping learning leaders demonstrate the impact of learning investments on business results. He has 18 years of experience in the HR and learning and talent and development space as an account manager, consultant, and thought leader. He has designed measurement systems for corporate universities and various learning platforms. So we are very excited to have Scott with us, and we hope you are too. So without any further delay, Scott, let's get started.
Great. Thank you, Alec. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here with such a large and varied audience. So I'm not going to make any guesses as to what everyone already knows about this topic. I'm going to try to cut across a wide range of measurement and analytics and impact topics to discussion that hopefully we can find some nuggets in this that you can take forward, and certainly we can have discussions in the Q&A as well. So before I talk about our learning journey, learning analytics and impact journey at Ericsson, it might be good. I'll give you a sense more about my journey and how I got here. It is important in the sense to know this because in some ways my background is really well suited to this combination, if you will, of measurement and analytics, which really to me is the big basis for it is research methods. So I started out in my career in the St. Louis area and really learned performance improvement and consulting and assessment as one of my core skill sets when I first started my career and managed a performance improvement function in a consulting practice. And we did a lot of work with Dana Gaines Robinson and Joe Harless at the time, and just really taking a performance focus and performance improvement focus, and that really has shaped the way that I look at learning. So keep that in mind as we go through. That to me, it forms the basis of a lot of what I do, is that early training. Also, my path took me into Tallahassee, Florida, and I got a PhD in learning systems there. And the big part about that work was I got to do a lot of work with the military, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, especially, which are really some of the leading institutions in terms of things like SCORM development, which has led really to XAPI development. It's kind of where we are now when we start to think about data and how to manage it in large systems. From there, I headed over to West Lafayette, Indiana. I was a professor at Purdue for a few years and a graduate program of learning design and technology. I still continue to consult, and one thing led to another. I'm now in a role at Ericsson that suits me very well, and decided to talk about it today. So, just as a quick overview, what we're going to do is talk about how to look at impact of learning, and especially on the business. Talk a little bit about measurement maturity, and how that plays into your journey, or at least into our journey, and how that might play into your journey in learning analytics and measurement, and just generally give you a sense of the kind of things that we've encountered on our journey, and hopefully some of it resonates with you. So I think it's important to get the context here of Ericsson and where what kind of work we do, and then how that impacts the way we look at learning impact. We're a 140-year-old company focusing on telecom services, and no, we don't sell that gigantic phone. I think that's what I know. When I first started at Ericsson, I thought, okay, is there a picture of this gigantic phone somewhere that And indeed, there is in the museum in Kista, Sweden, just outside of Stockholm. There are some of the early days in the Ericsson Museum shows you the movement to where we are today. But Ericsson was founded on the premise that communication is a human right, and I think that still holds true today. We're leading in mobile infrastructure. Operations, business support systems, services is obviously huge for us now. You can see some of the numbers. Innovation is important. We spend a lot in R&D. We have a lot of subscribers. Our main customers are the internet service providers, the phone companies, if you will, communications companies, and then you can see some of our stats there on the right. We're large, over 100,000 employees, all over the world, and striving really now in some new directions. So it's important to talk about this a little bit from a context point of view, because it is really what we're focusing on in learning now, are these smaller bubbles out there outside of our core business. The smaller bubbles now create opportunity for learning and in terms of employee readiness and competency development. And this is where, Ericsson's leaders are looking to learning to make a difference, to lead. And so we're really focused on these things like services, cloud. Obviously 5G is a big space. Is a big direction for us, and that's coming quickly. And that's where we really focus our energies in terms of being able to support the business in these new directions. So and just kind of put that into context. Our leaders really want to know. In the end, they really know that we're planning to measure, right? That we've got key metrics that are aligned with the business. What kind of questions do we have? Well, our CLO, Brad Samarja, he wants to know just how are we doing? How's our function doing? Are we at a corporate and regional learning level producing outputs that are on target with what we had promised? As we look up then and go toward talent development, human resources levels, we want to know how are we doing, how are people doing in particular regions or locations compared to others, competency areas. Is the learning working? Is it any good? Is there value there that we can promote, on up the chain to, in operations, as I mentioned before, the competencies are critical. So, what does it cost to get competency and competency readiness? Is it cheaper to hire than to to train. So questions like that are of critical importance. And then our new CEO, who started in January, really what they want to know is the investment well spent, and is there an impact on our business? And so that's why we're here today, talk about how we connect some of these dots, or at least attempt to connect these dots. I'll be honest and say that we're not connecting all the dots all the time in ways that we would like, but call this phase one of our journey that I'll share with you, and then maybe we'll talk again in 6 or 8 months, and we'll see where we're at that point. Okay, I've used this quote in a few presentations, and I typically say I'll give a quarter to anybody who can tell me who's attributed to this quote. But with the size of this audience, I'll go broke if I do that. So I'm not going to do that. But what gets measured gets managed. There's another quote that's similar. What gets measured gets done. There's a variation on this. But this quote is important, I think, from a measurement point of view and a business impact point of view, because it doesn't come from someone from learning. It's coming from a business consultant, Peter Drucker. And what Drucker really focused on was, let's make sure that we understand what's happening right now on the, either in terms of being able to track it and improve it and continuously improve it. His name will kind of be mentioned in continuous improvement and quality circles, along with people like Joanne and Deming, but a very influential guy when it comes to thinking about learning in organizations and impact in organizations. He kind of he was around during a shift from industrial to information to knowledge age. He worked over that 40-year period. So he's got a lot of wisdom. I recommend his books if you want that nice big picture overview of knowledge and knowledge building and the impact of measurement on the organization. So with the Drucker kind of background in mind, what we want to know is what key metrics link learning to organizational goals, and how they're going to be captured and reported. We're in a space in learning where it's changing rapidly, right? We've got lots of new platforms, even theories or ways of working and learning that produce a lot of different types of data, and then we're expected in our space in learning analytics and measurement to provide insight and recommendations based on what we learn as this data is collected. I'll talk a lot more about this, but this is the general picture, what we call modern learning. These smaller bites of learning, these continuous learning, experiential learning environments is creating lots of challenges in terms of data collection. So let's start at the top. So one example of something that we use, this is extracted from things we use, and so it's a tool that maybe once a year or twice we would look at just the big picture here. So what are the key global business requirements of the firm? And look at 3 basic aspects of that. What are they? List them. What are the drivers? The actions that will be taken to get there from a business perspective, again, very high level. And then what are the key metrics that, if you're looking at any of our regions and our global offices, what is being measured at the highest level? How does learning align with that? So we also look at our key business requirements from a learning perspective. Things like, how aligned are we? This exact, what's our spend efficiency? How effective are we? What is our, do we have offerings in learning that are, cutting edge and that meet the needs of our competency development? So our driver is there, and you look at our drivers and metrics, those are the things that we report or have dashboards for to report up as best we can and align those to these. This is a big push, right? There's a lot of space between that lower box of key learning requirements and key business requirements on the top. So we've got to do a lot of work to do that alignment across, business units and other parts of the firm that also can, contribute to the overall attainment of key metrics. So this is one tool that I recommend, and that we use various forms of this at different levels, and I'll share some of those with you as we go along. But this is a strategic level of alignment to look at. Once you've got that, then when you're looking at learning analytics, reporting, now you've got to figure out, okay, how am I going to collect that data? And so we align that first slide then with the data and then the people who is responsible and who will help us get this data and collect it and so on. So these are kind of maybe obvious, but in a sense, it's good to get it down on paper. It's good to see where the gaps are on a strategic level. Making sure that you can get the systems in place to be able to collect the data that you need and properly visualize and analyze it. So high-level strategic kind of mapping first. And one example then of, if you want to go to one of our drivers was, are we doing the right things in terms of learning? Are they the right courses, the right programs, the right learning experiences? And one way that we're moving toward is being able to align the particular programs that we have to those goals. So just an example there of increase costs, efficiency by X% as a corporate goal. We have a couple of key global programs that specifically address that, and we'll take a stab at percentage of increase in either that course or the percentage that we want to see that number that our learning impacts the particular global goal or business goal. Another one there, growth acceleration. That's obviously important for most companies. Sales is the big driver there, and sales programs. What do we expect to get in terms of impact of those? And then something like pricing or transformational pricing. You're looking at order to cash. You're looking at some of these kinds of programs again that drive those. But just an example here of how to do some basic alignment on paper of your learning offerings and learning experiences and investments, and how they are specifically aligned to business goals. So, once we're getting all that down on paper, then you start to look at, okay, how are we designing these courses? Are we designing them and learning experiences in a way that will allow us to, first of all, say we're aligned to business goals, and then actually show how it's contributing, that particular program is contributing. Again, here's an example of that. We're looking at some of these percentages by which, say, the contributors to success relating to, say, increasing order to cash efficiency, which increases working capital days. These are complex measures that the business uses. We don't pretend that learning is going to solve all those problems. So we look at, okay, what is the degree to which this course is really going to, or this program is really going to impact us? So making some educated guesses about those and trying to, again, document those, and not so much to promise that you're going to get these percentages, but to say this is the direction we're heading, and this is our goal that we want to attain. So, one of the ways to get there is a tool that we use that I have used in the past, in almost all of the consulting work that I have done, is an impact map or a measurement map of some sort. But the way that that we can get those percentages that I showed you on the previous page of impact is to work with managers, work with people who are paying for this learning to figure out exactly to what extent do we see learning changing behaviors that behaviors that then will be measurable in terms of leading indicators that will have an impact on business and business results. This particular model, you're going to see more of these. I'm going to show a few more. In fact, here's another real quick example of a sales version of this where we try to align, again, the learning with specific behaviors and specific objectives. So you can see it's not going to be that we're 100% going to increase revenue of the organization, because of this learning program. Certainly not. But ideally, it should, on paper at least, have be intended to do that, right? And so to the best of your ability, have the people who are invested the most in the training and the learning help you figure out, what exactly do we mean when we say develop partner network and expand sales team footprint and negotiate better deals? What is it that learning needs to do better and or performance improvement need to do better to get closer to the goals there and to achieve what needs to be achieved? So impact maps are huge. Again, I'm going to share one more as in an example of a project a little later, but I highly recommend these as a consulting tool. And then the other great thing that they do with managers is they set the expectation that we're going to actually measure learning, and that learning is going to be, we're going to measure the application of the learning and in terms of looking at behaviors and KPIs. So that's the beauty of the impact map and the mapping process. I've seen these by a lot of other names and different configurations, but these go a long way, in my mind, to helping to set up learning measurement and analytics. Now, again, not knowing exactly where the audience is at in terms of understanding of performance. Again, I said I'm greatly influenced by performance improvement. That was how I learned about training. I learned instructional design after I learned performance improvement. So I have that bias in that every learning intervention had better be focused on a business goal. If it's not, then I'm not sure why we're doing it. And so here's a good map of a kind of overview of that solution level impact that you're expecting. So when you have learning impact when it works, you're looking at what are the skills or knowledges that are taught, how are they influencing that individual or team on the job, in what specific way are they changing behavior, and then how is that behavior impacting results. So that's where we're at, as opposed to measuring the skills and knowledges that were attained and stopping, right? And this is, I think, a challenge. And I can say that in a certain percentage of our courses, this is where we certainly stop, is that skills, what was attained or what were the satisfaction levels of learners, and we don't go all the way across to the finish line. But certainly that should always be our goal for every program in some way or another, at least being able to say that we are aligned of the objectives of that learning with business results. And if we don't measure it, then it's either because we don't have the resources at the time to do so, but it's not because we don't think, it's not because we aren't able to measure it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's a key, I think, just mindset, right, for learning analytics, is that we want to measure across the entire cycle of the learning. We want to know what the usage was. We want to know what the skill knowledge is. And we also want to know what the KPIs are, because that's where our learning analytics is going to be most powerful, is in helping us predict whether or not this particular investment is valuable. Okay, this is a little bit of a shift now. I mean, when I began my role, I guess my thought was one of the best ways to begin a transformation out of what I would consider a state of where we were doing reporting to one in which we were performing a service, and specifically not a reporting service, but an analytics service. And it was a name change, but also kind of a change in the way we thought about data and how we looked at the way that we worked with our internal customers. So one of the things that we worked on was getting out of the order-taking mode from a reporting point of view and more into the mode of consulting and and asking questions and making sure we understood what was required. And also working in the back end, working on more self-service and more automation of data so that we saved a lot of hours from doing ad hoc reporting by automating and doing more self-service reporting. So the upshot of it is that I think we're moving a lot closer to analytics because we're not spending all of our time doing reporting. I hope that makes sense. And so the definition here of analytics to me is that it's end-to-end support for L&D that provides reporting, dashboarding, and analytical insights into the specific impact of learning. And then across those verticals, individual, business unit, and organizational levels. So we'll talk some more about that as well. Before we do, though, CEB recently produced a survey finding 62% of CLOs feel executive pressure to use learning analytics to show impact. Brad Saboja likes to call this exposure. He says, how exposed are we to the business? How well are we actually using data and analytics to communicate with the business and communicate business impact? So take a shot at this. Go ahead and complete the survey real quick. Let me know what you think. I'll give it about 10 seconds here. We'll see how you look. Maybe I should be in your audience and you presenting to me if we've got a lot of people on the work cover. So we'll see. Yeah, I think this is typical, right? This makes a lot of sense. Some things you do really well. Some things you got gaps. And then there are just like, parts where you just don't feel like you've even got off the dime. You haven't moved yet. And I've been in all three organizations. And I think the larger you get, the more of a challenge it is. The more that your data is dispersed, the more of a challenge it is. So anyway, this is great. Thank you for the response. So I think it does make sense in my mind, based on my experience as well. So again, talking about a lot of what I'm thinking about is how to help my colleagues understand, the flow, the learning value chain, getting past that point of we want to just measure learner satisfaction or learning, which is obviously really important, but also getting that mindset of there's a chain of evidence that we have to work on to show impact. So impact is not a number. Impact is more of an approach, because it's a process and a way of measuring. It's not so much the data point. And I think once we get past that and start to look at things like these levels, learning is consumed on an individual basis typically. It adds value when it's retained. So there's your learning. How much was it retained? And then it adds further value when it was taken back to the workplace. Was it transferred? Was it applied? And then obviously more value when it's integrated into the larger team performance. And all of this is really built from the bottom up, in a sense, from what L&D does and what we provide, or what kind of resources we provide to people in learning. So the challenge is then when we try to take that, we do that pretty well. In a lot of cases, I think we do this stuff. We know how to measure frequencies, and we know how to measure learning and learning transfer. The tricky part is this way, right? Is then when you try to say, okay, but it's having this great effect on the business, and this is when you get in trouble, because first of all, our business acumen is necessary to really communicate well to our executives, the CEO, COOs, and CFOs. They're talking a different language in many cases about how they think about the business than we are in learning. And so the better we can get at that in understanding how they're driving, what's driving those goals, those business results, and then how does learning interact with some of these other things, market pressures, these external factors. That's what Ericsson is very greatly affected by market pressures, currencies, valuation, things like that are really out of our control. But there are other things that we do also take into account, of how we can leverage our learning better to actually produce better results. So keeping all these in mind, that the management of processes from the top down, we somewhere have to come together. That's again why that impact map comes in, is if we can get people who are really focused on the operational results and business outcomes to talk with us on a regular basis about how we can make sure that this learning is getting applied, even though it's a small percentage of the overall value chain, so to speak, it's still one that has a great impact on the organization overall. So one of the things that we do in using this, and I apologize, I am a former consultant, so I do like a lot of these frameworks, but I'm going to share them quickly. One of the things to understand about these levels of measurement and measurement across these, you're going from a research perspective, we're talking about different units of analysis, right? And so that's really important when you're doing research is, okay, am I measuring individual learning or individual data points? Do I have team or business unit or function data points? How rolled up is it, right? And then on the organizational level, even more rolled up. So when you start to combine these and you're doing analytics, it gets messy and it gets much more difficult to interpret, and you lose power as you kind of go across units of analysis. So it's important to kind of frame it and make sure we get our questions really well developed. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. I think it's probably well known for many of you, but as you can see, these are the kinds of things we're measuring on up to business and societal outcomes. For Ericsson, it's extremely important that we are, our sustainable development goals of global sustainable development goals are part of our operations and business goals, and it's all linked. So when you're looking at it from a research question point of view and thinking of measurement as research, which is what you should be thinking about if we want to do analytics, is that we've got units of analysis and questions within each of those. And then there's going to be, so you've got these verticals, and then there's going to be the horizontal questions that where you can start to look at measures across. So things like, traffic, and frequencies. What are the most popular learning channels, right? That's obvious. That's a big question to know. Where are people gravitating to? What are the most important, are the most expensive courses the most highly rated or highly valued? Just getting a sense of a feel of the landscape of the learning consumption is really huge. And with analytics, I think that's where we have some great opportunities, is to look at consumption levels as they then relate to some of these other outcomes at the behavior level and organizational level, but especially looking at things like what specific behaviors lead to better sales, or did the learning solution transfer to the job? I'm in the center column there. These are really important questions that we try to document as many of them as we can and think about our metrics as questions to answer, as opposed to these kind of isolated data points out there that we're trying to achieve as goals, but really more as questions that we need to answer as a business to make sure that we're having impact. So rolling through things quickly, I hope I'm not going too fast, but I want to make sure that we can kind of cross over some key ideas here. So from that from that last slide and from those questions, you create a strategy. And, how are we going to measure, no matter what it is, in terms of investment? Not that every learning investment will have all of the examples of measures here done, but we want to make sure that we know when we're going to do it and why we're going to do measurement. So, for example, here of this strategy, and I've kind of taken ours and tweaked it a little bit to give you a flavor of it without just giving it all away. It's one that, in terms of, we look at status. If you look on the right-hand column, there's status and methods and tools. Those are the things that we're really tracking very closely to make sure that we are, acquiring what we need in terms of methods, tools, or even people resources to do this work. And then I'm kind of running the function, then want to know how are we doing on that. So the phases on the left, really, one of the hardest parts, I think, for any L&D group is to get a handle around the first one, the analyze, align, plan. It's just something that we don't seem to do well. We don't connect it to performance analysis, the needs assessment part, to the learning design part. We tend to jump right into design. We're engineers at heart, maybe. We want to solve that problem and we want to get going. And we do a pretty good job on the instructional design and learning design. But what we want to do is make sure that we've got the impact maps completed, that we've already started a conversation with the managers in the business about that learning, and use that first phase as that example. So I'm sure you all have lots of variations on this strategy, but really trying to productize it in a way. And use it to drive everything we do from a measurement point of view. For us is really important to be able to do analytics. We can't do analytics if we don't do this stuff correctly, in my mind. So, and this really talks about what it is we're analyzing, right? And so we go on to analyze, engage, and I use that term engage just when the learner is engaged with that experience, whatever it is. If it's downloading a video, if it's just cruising through a portal, or if it's completing a formal course, an ILT or web-based training, whatever it is, we would attract that and know that very well. And on down into learning, and then what we call transfer, and then early impact. And this is an important concept, is early impact, because it's really sometimes where we stop. If we don't have KPI data, or if we don't have available measures beyond surveys or interviews, the best we can do then, and we should do this, is use proxies, right, for KPIs. And proxies for KPIs are survey data and or interviews with performance. And then finally, the bottom red is predict and optimize. And I didn't put that in red to say, like red, yellow, green, so much as I think I just randomly chose red. But red is the color there for where we really want to get excited about, and what we want to move toward as in 6 to 9 months, I think we'll be there. We're not there yet in terms of being able to do better even correlations and predicting and of which investments are having the most value or will have the most value if you increase them. So a measurement strategy that is aligned, to that overall flow and to those questions. Those measurement questions that we have that are based on our metrics. A little bit of a shift here now when you start to think about all that measurement that we're doing. We've got it before, during, and after learning. So we're getting a lot of data. And this data is coming in, and it's coming in from different sources. Here on the left-hand side, you can see, you've got all kinds of data that are relating to to the employee, to the learner, the HRMS system. We got formal learning, we got blended learning, we have social media, the yammers, the video downloading, and all these different sources are important for us to get a handle on and know, and to be able to capture and both report on and also use as a way to demonstrate value. So, this is why it's complicated. This is why when we're doing reporting, and why ad hoc reporting can go crazy, is because you have so many different things to report on, and you just don't have enough people. You can't hire, I mean, you could, but you shouldn't, hire enough people to do this kind of reporting. So we need automation. We need to get smart about how we manage the data. One thing we're moving toward is an enterprise data warehouse. And from there, you can use your extraction tools up there on the right, the dashboarding tools like a Domo or a Tableau, the analytical tools like an SPSS, and so on. I think it's worth noting here, this is where, when I think about the changes that are going to be coming that I'm looking for, that we're certainly looking toward in Ericsson, is how to streamline this, how to make it easier maybe easier isn't the word. Nothing's ever easy in this data analytics, but how to make it more accessible, this data to all users and not just people in the analytics space. I think the aggregation tools, the degrees, the EdCast, those kinds of tools are going to really change this game. I think they're already changing it. I think also I mentioned XAPI earlier. I think you're going to have your learning record store in there. That's going to be facing next to that EDW in some way. So there's technologies I think that are making this better. And but at the bottom, I think at the more fundamental level, we've got to make sure that we've got our systems and processes in place to manage all the data. So I have to admit, I've been, I don't know, since maybe 07 or 06, worked with various LMSs in data analytics and space. And the one thing that keeps me up at night is data quality. And if we don't have that right, nothing else matters from a reporting and analytics and point of view. So one of the first things we did when we were looking at the journey here of going across to reporting to analytics is really clean up and focus on data and get one data source, save time on ad hoc reporting by automating and self-servicing. And then, now we're starting to move into standard and some of that first level of advanced analytics there, where we're able to make more sense out of our data. We trust it now, and it feels more, it feels like we're starting to pull together the data in ways that can help us answer the questions. So look at this as a kind of maturity model that you're going to have to go through, and there's no way to jump over the steps. You really have to go through it. It's part of your knowledge. It's part of your experience. It's part of the tools you have. All these will get you on up the chain. That survey that we just did showed that there's a lot of people that are probably in the middle here somewhere, right? And so let's just take a look at that. Where are you when you look at that measurement and analytics maturity? Where do you fit on that curve? Take a minute to pop an answer in there, and we'll see what we got. Okay, we got a large number, 91 or so, 92% down at the stage of really trying to get a handle on it, right? It's hard. It's getting harder because there are so many, as I showed in the earlier slide, there are so many different pieces of the puzzle, and most of the data scientists are not in our L&D organizations, right? They're sitting in operations. So we're a little further down the priority list when it comes to analytic systems. And so as we can get better and smarter about this and push up, we're going to get better. We're going to get more mature. I want to meet the very mature people here, that 2.6, but, see how you do. And that's an awesome, it'd be awesome to feel like that. I want to come and, and hear your story. Use cases for learning impact questions. So coming down the home stretch now in this presentation, I want to just kind of get to, again, we talked about the questions. One of the big questions that come up for us, how are we doing, on the key metrics compared to last year? That's the obvious one, right? Let's have some basis for comparing. If we've got a number of, our consumption is a certain number of hours, we want to know, is that better or worse, or where is that relative to, to our numbers from even a month ago or a year ago? So that's kind of the first step, is to have that kind of analytic data available to you. And the obvious way to get that is, through dashboards. And so this is our capture of a Domo dashboard that we have. And Domo is just a cloud-based tool for doing, it's very similar to Tableau in a way in terms of the visualizations it does. It's different functionally in how it works, but it allows us to cut across some of our key metrics here. You can see we're talking about reach, we're talking about consumption, we're talking about impact of learning, we're talking about, some level, these sort of end-of-course surveys, but also then employee satisfaction, but also then our impact studies. So we can dashboard it. That's a first good step, is to having those, to beginning to answer our questions. Another question you look at is, does learning correlate or consumption correlate with higher performance? This is a question that you hear a lot coming out of, say, workforce analytics. I mean, in my mind, I say, of course it does, right? It's going to, in some way, positively correlate. The question really is this answer begs more questions. And it's, really what I know is, what are the active ingredients that make someone successful or makes them a successful problem solver? Certainly, this is a chicken or the egg problem. When you start to talk about correlations when you're going beyond an individual level of analysis and you move up to another higher level of analysis, correlations get fuzzy, right? They don't tell you anything about cause and effect. They're just telling you about association. So the good thing about a correlation is it gives you a sense of what next question to ask. And, we're spending a lot of time right now on identifying top performers and what differentiates them from others. It's a big part of of the way we think and the way we look at measurement. Who are these people who are doing well? How do we get this other really big chunk of people who are doing okay, but not quite as well? How do we get them up into that higher performing group? There's a lot of gain that's made on a couple of percentage points of moving people up into that level. Here's a real quick flow of how we're doing it. We're going to take a deep dive into this. First, we have this impact map. I talked about that earlier. We're going to define what it is we're doing. We've got an intervention or a solution. Let's make sure that the business is involved in defining how we're going to measure. About 60 to 90 days post workshop or learning experience, we'll do a survey, identify from that survey success and non-success cases, do interviews with managers and employees who participated, collect KPI measures if they're available, analyze. So this is the basic cycle, right, for impact measurement. It is not a simple or easy cycle, so we can't measure every project that way. So we start by just looking at, what are our priorities? Way back to that really early slides I showed, what were the courses, the programs that we're banking on to have impact on the business? Measure those first. Start with this. So we start with a lot of sales. We start with a lot of process, order to cash. Those are really, really important for cost savings, cost efficiency, where Ericsson's focused now. So those are the programs that we measure with impact studies. This is an example of a map for one of those programs. So again, on the left, every learning should drive revenue and drive and growth and drive down costs. If it doesn't do that, then why are we doing it? We then have the business help us with these middle boxes, the orange, the silver, the gray. What is it that, asking the question, how do we achieve better profits, better growth? Well, they're going to have lots of ways to do this. If you keep whittling it down and getting moving closer and closer to what do people not know that they need to know, or what can they not do, when you look at performance objectives that they need to do better, when you do that analysis, now it tells you what training or learning is needed, and then it also provides that gap of how we're going to know if they can now do it better. So this is performance improvement. When you start to look at the leading indicators, the performance objectives, the behaviors that get those leading indicators, and you measure those well. That's our focus for when we do these success case impact studies. Here's an example of what managers really like this when we present this kind of data. It's anecdotal, but it flows through the learning to the application to the results that were created. These are coming from interviews. So we're probing the interviews, what we learned from in the questionnaires and the surveys, and people can talk about and give examples of when they did something specifically by anticipating argumentation on the part of the customer, or consciously applying high value to customer and low costs, and just thinking about some of the strategies they learned and then applying it and giving that story. Very powerful stories. I'm a big believer in these. We use these to market future studies as well to get more managers engaged in impact measurement. So when you roll that up a little bit, we've got, here's an example of 4 programs. One way to look at it, you can look across early impact and say, just look at the survey data, and is learning having an impact on performance? Well, the employees think so. To about 3/4 of them, for the most part. Some programs are higher than others, and this is what we want to know. We want to know which programs are having the most impact, and if they aren't having impact, then what's happening? Another way to look at this from a rolled up point of view is this again, we're really focused on differentiating high performers. The green are high performers on the bottom. The blue on the top are quote unquote low performers, and that they said they weren't able to apply, they weren't able to use the learning. It's an exact opposite profile when you look at the relationship of manager engagement. So my manager was very engaged in the learning. This is a characteristic of high performance. My manager was not engaged. That's a characteristic of low performance. This is what we have seen as a very critical piece of learning, and the learning experience is the more engagement and the more involvement of managers, the more likely you are to have success. And again, one of the ingredients of getting those managers engaged is that impact map that we showed earlier, and getting them to think about and talk about performance, and then how that learning is going to relate to performance. All right, and here's where we want to go. We're not here. I think we will get here in the sense of we do the measurement of in this example. This is a generic example of a kind of prescriptive predictive analytics. What we really want to be able to do is link up, and the way you do this, by the way, in analysis is regression modeling. So you're going to use, and this is where your eyes gloss over, right? But you're going to use linear and multiple regression. That means that you're going to look at different variables and their influence or their relationship to an outcome. So if your outcome, is more sales, what are the factors here within the training, within the behaviors, customer calls, within the kinds of other behaviors, presentations? What are they doing that statistically is influencing that outcome, that financial outcome, or that other KPI? And to model this with data, you need a lot of it, and B, you need to feel comfortable that your data is true and accurate. So that's why this is hard in a learning space, is because the kind of data that we get from the training end or the learning end to connect it to then behaviors, calls, or product presentations, for example, or frequencies of behaviors is difficult and somewhat time consuming. So we start to get to some of these aggregation tools and some of these other some other analytics tools. We're going to get better and better and faster at connecting these dots. So the better that we can get at some of the fundamental stuff, the strategic level alignments, so that we're doing the right training right off the bat, then the more quickly we're going to be able to get to being able to analyze what performance support perhaps is going to help our learning get applied more quickly. So that is ending it on that note. I also want to say, if you happen to be going to the CLO week of Silicon Valley, I'll be over there. We could chat some more about this stuff, and then also corporate learning analytics in Nashville this summer. So there may be some more opportunities, for us to chat. And I guess now, Eric, this is a time where we want to see if there are any questions that I can attempt to answer. I hope it's not from those people who are really doing well. Otherwise, I'm going to feel a little bit, guilty.
Yeah, we got some questions in the queue, Scott, so we're going to get going. We'll have time for maybe a couple of these. So if you have a question, though, we do keep these on record, so we will have these, so don't hesitate to submit. The first one, Scott, comes from Nisha, and the question is, first it starts with a comment. Very happy to see societal outcomes in your third level, not just organizational outcomes. What are some of the outcomes that you have been able to see at the societal level?
Yeah, we don't directly measure that, but Ericsson has a function that is in the sustainable development group, and they measure things like, our outreach to developing nations. They measure from a learning point of view. We train Ericsson employees to work with as volunteers with developing nations and develop infrastructure for internet services and so on. So we're measuring that in terms of what levels of impact are we having on those particular societies and communities. Really, I guess at the community level, places like Peru, Malaysia. Forgive me, I can't remember all, but places where we are doing a lot of work in trying to bring communications, again, back to the idea that communications is a human right, and bring it to people and also have our employees involved in that process.
All right.
But I'm happy to talk with you about that more. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll squeeze one more in here. We have a little bit over a minute, and this one comes from Joan, and Joan's question is, do you respond to the bottom-up, top-down issue by having an executive sponsor that promotes the learning program?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the, I think, challenges, that we often will face, is to find that exact right person to sponsor that and to drive it, and to get the support for our programs. But absolutely, I didn't mention it there, but that's essentially part of that top down for sure.
Okay.
I think we can take one more, perhaps.
We can look through here. We have a little bit of time here. Okay, so we'll take this one from Jared. How do you handle the change management process of measuring the performance and learning of team members in a more formal way than perhaps was done before?
Oh, wow. Well, no, we can't answer that one in 30 seconds, but no, we'll try. Yeah, I mean, the change management is huge, of course, and I think we're going through the process now. We're creating a life cycle model for learning. And a big part of that is the upfront measurement and the impact evaluation. And so we're trying to thread it all together so that when our new or existing learning and development people are doing projects, we use that model as the basis. A lot there. Good question.
All right, Scott. Yeah, we had a lot of good ones rolling in there. Like I said, we do have those in the queue, and they are saved. So we'll have those on file. But thank you, Scott, for that. We appreciate you taking the time to present today. It was great presentation. I thought a lot of great information was shared. And I'm going to thank today's sponsors of this Spotlight webinar at Cornerstone OnDemand. But I also want to thank all of you in the audience. We had some great participation today. For those of you who've asked, you can find materials from today's event and all other CLO webinars archived at events.clomedia.com or click on that CLO icon at the bottom of your screen. Also, if you enjoyed the presentation, please take a moment to fill out our post-event survey, which will appear after this webinar shuts down. As I always say, your feedback is very important to us. We do look through all of the survey results, and it will help us improve our future webinars. So we really appreciate you taking the time to filling that out. And at this point, please take note of your HR, CI, and SHRM certification codes. If you've been here the entire time, they should be in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If you do not see them there, as long as you've been here for the required period of time, you will receive those codes in a follow-up email. So thank you, Scott, Cornerstone, and all of our attendees today. We'll see you all back here for our next CLO webinar on Tuesday, March 28th. No one left behind, driving performance within a deskless workforce. Have a great day, everybody.